All right. Thank y'all for coming out tonight. Did y'all get y'all's questions filled out already? All right. I want to introduce Jack Hudson. He's with the Vanderbilt Baptist Church. Please stand for a prayer.
All right, let's pray together. Dear Father in heaven, we praise you for being the only true and living God. We praise you for being a holy God, a just God. But we also thank you for being a loving and merciful God. Father, we thank you for allowing us to live in the greatest nation in the history of the world, and also the greatest state in this union. Father, we live in a time when all things once considered settled are now confusing. Morals, families, politics, sexual identity, even churches seem to be wandering in a cloud of uncertainty. Father, we acknowledge losing sight of you and your guidance. We confess that to you, and we ask your forgiveness. Help us to seek your will in your way. Thank you for elected representatives like Attorney General Ken Paxton and others in our state and counties who seek your direction. Please continue to influence them as they make decisions that affect all of us. I pray that you will encourage us to encourage them to be strong and courageous to do what is right in your eyes. Remind us that this representative republic, federal and state, requires participants and not spectators. Thank you for revealing yourself to us through your Son, Jesus Christ. In his name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. All right. Now I'd like to introduce Judge Sklar with Jackson County and Judge Zeller, Victoria County.
All right, let's please join me in the pledge, the American flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me in the pledge. We could use some prayer too, I'll tell you that. The pledge to the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Well, it is encouraging to see such a wonderful crowd here this afternoon, and you can all be seated. Encouraging to see such a fantastic group of folks here. As introduced, I'm Ben Zeller, Victoria County Judge, and I want to welcome each and every one of you here this evening for an important discussion on a very important issue. You know, I think the size of this crowd here this evening tells us all that the illegal immigration crisis is not something that's being fabricated or embellished. It's something that's here. It's something that's real. It's something that's in our backyards and even in our front yards. And it's something that merits the attention of folks like you who are concerned about what's happening and willing to come out on a Monday afternoon to help address it and to fix the problem. I appreciate General Paxton being here this afternoon, Congressman Cloud here in attendance for the work that they do. I appreciate Sheriff Louderback for organizing this event and making this possible, Sheriff Marr and all of the sheriffs in our regional alliance, and also for every single man and woman in law enforcement here tonight. It truly is a burden that they carry, Washington's failure of will and of policy on this issue. So I think we owe every one of them a round of applause this evening. Wonderful people who truly put their lives on the line. We owe them our thanks. Thank you all once again, and I'll hand the mic over to Judge Sklar.
Howdy. Again, my name is Judge Jill Sklar. I'm the judge here in Jackson County, Texas, and welcome friends and neighbors to our area of the woods. You know, I really appreciate the Sheriff's Alliance for putting this together. Sheriff Louderback, thank you very much. Sheriff Marr. This is a very important topic that we all need to be here to listen to. I can remember being a 4-year-old in a deer stand in just north of Del Rio, Texas. And my first memories are not of watching deer in Turkey, but of watching illegal immigrants cross through the pasture that I was hunting in. And I only bring that up to say that my experience as a child is way different than what we're seeing today. And we all need to be prepared for what we're going to do if it happens to be in our backyard or our front yard, as Judge Seller has said. So, General Paxton, thank you for coming and bringing attention to this matter. It's very important to know how we're going to respond, because these folks, they're dangerous, they're evil, and they have little regard to human life, as we have seen many, many accounts over and over. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sheriff Louderback, who will introduce the general and his fabulous team. And I know it's a brilliant team because I went to law school with this gentleman right here, and I studied with him. He's a smart man. So with that, thank you.
Thank you, Judge Sklar, Judge Zeller. Thank you very much, and thank you all for taking time out to come and have us talk about a subject that's of extreme concern right now. The purpose for the meeting tonight is because we have a lot of opinions out here. We've got a lot of opinions in law enforcement. We have a lot of opinions from our citizenry on exactly how we should handle certain situations. In order to have a consistent approach to this, to keep our public in the best possible shape that we can. How would I do that? That was the question, as more and more questions were coming to me about, what do I do in this case? I was told this. What should I do in another case? I was told this. Those things started to bother me, and they started to add up to a point where it's like, I need some help here. I need to look for the legal arm of the chief law enforcement officer in the state of Texas to ask him if he would come down here and address the public in a local town hall. Now, General Paxton is the 51st general here in Texas. He's in his second term, and I don't know when. If anybody can tell me when we had an attorney general down here in Victoria, Texas, talking to our public. That's a tribute to a man. General Paxton, thank you, sir.
Well, so I was told I was coming to talk about COVID. Is that the wrong topic? Sheriff, thank you so much for that introduction. Thank you to each sheriff, all of our law enforcement here, for what you're doing with this issue, and just for the things you do every day, risking your lives and protecting our citizens. And I want to thank everybody here tonight, because I'm going to try to stand up and see if that helps. For being here, caring about this issue. I think Texas is clearly at the forefront of this issue because we are a border state. We're not just a border state. We have 2/3 of the border. And so just by sheer luck, whatever you want to call it, we're having to deal with this issue. And it's an issue that we shouldn't have to deal with the way we're having to deal with. It should be the federal government. It's their responsibility to deal with this issue. And I want to talk about why we're in this spot, what we're trying to do, and then I really, really want to listen to you. I've got some really great people up here who have really focused on this issue, who have a lot of legal training, and in some ways are better prepared to handle this than probably almost anybody in the world, because they're from Texas. They've got the right law enforcement background. They've got the right legal experience. And I want to introduce Brent Webster, who's my first assistant, right here. And you'll note I have a lot of people here tonight, and there's a reason, because we care about this issue. This is something we've been focused. We've put a lot of resources in. This is Aaron Wrights. His job is Deputy Attorney General for Legal Strategy. And what that means is he is actually literally the guy that's sitting around every day trying to figure out how do we deal with these problems and trying to figure out ways to help, ways to make a difference. That's what he's done. And then we've got Josh Reno, who's Deputy Attorney General for Criminal Justice. And Josh deals with all of our law enforcement. We have some law enforcement, and all of our attorneys that deal with criminal justice issues. And so he has a lot of background knowledge. And I have a few other people, if I can actually read my notes. I've got Alejandro Garcia, who is head of our communications right over here. Standing next to Amanda Sanders, who did a great job helping us set this up. She's Director of Outreach. Kimberly Hubbard-Willingham, right here. She's also part of our communications team. She's Deputy Communications Director. And then we have Kyle Matchburn, who is taking lots of pictures tonight. I don't know where he is. He's got a long, long beard, and you'll find him in the back with a camera. So I want to thank my staff for making the trip and for being a part of this. So just so you know, oftentimes people want me to do things like that I can't do. I always tell them the legislature did not give me any tanks or bazookas. They gave me lawyers. So I deal with legal issues. And so we have, in our short period of time with our new president, we've sued him 5 times over immigration issues. And we've sued him over health issues, the COVID issue, the fact that he's letting people in that are spreading COVID. And supposedly that was a huge issue with him and his administration. And yet, as it relates to illegal immigration, didn't seem to matter. We've sued him over the public charge rule, which basically says they're not supposed to let people in the country. They're going to be on public assistance immediately. And yet, that doesn't seem to be an issue. So we've got that lawsuit. We have another lawsuit that, shockingly, we sued him in his 3rd day in office, which we believe is like the fastest any president's ever been sued. And we got an injunction on day 6 because he had said that he was not going to deport anybody during the first 100 days. Seems like a nice thing to say, except it's illegal. His job is to enforce laws, not make up new laws. And for him to look at the law and say, we're pushing this law aside and we're going to do exactly the opposite, that's why we've been successful. We've got an injunction. Whether he's following it or not, we'll ultimately end up court and we'll have an opportunity to talk about it. And so we've gotten these lawsuits going. The one that was wasn't the most recent one, but another one that I think is really important is they are releasing criminals, convicted felons, into our state after they've been in Texas prisons and other prisons, and they're supposed to deport them. Not happening. They're getting to stay. And so there's lots of issues. And one of the things that I did recently, I went to Washington with Senator Rick Scott of Florida, Senator Ted Cruz, I think you guys have heard of him, from Texas, Senator Mike Lee, Senator Johnson from Wisconsin. There were a couple other senators, Senator Langford for Oklahoma, and we talked about these issues. We held a press conference on this very issue, and of course, I was brought in because we seem to know a lot about it in Texas. And I had a few suggestions for the president, and those suggestions I think are pretty reasonable. One is follow the law. I mean, it seems like a simple suggestion. A lot could be fixed if President Biden would just follow the law. And there are laws in place. We've elected people to put those laws in place. His job is to follow those laws. And that was my first suggestion. Another suggestion was, there were some kind of good policies that were in place before you came into office that were working. Why don't you go back to some of those policies that work, like continuing to build the wall, which we had a good start to. I also just suggested that he allow transparency in what's going on. They've been very secretive about what's going on, where these people are going once they're here, how the cartels are involved. And by the way, I did suggest when I started off talking at this press conference that the only beneficiary that I could think of, that the only real beneficiaries of his policies are the cartels. The people that are coming in are having to pay the cartels to get here. I've heard on average between $4,000 and $50,000 a person, so you don't get here unless you're paying them. And meanwhile, while our Border Patrol is busy taking care of these people, the cartels have a much easier access to transporting drugs and trafficking. And so really, the Biden administration policies enable the cartels more than... I think I just lost there it is. Those policies enable the cartels to become tremendously powerful along the border, and they also enrich them like they've never been enriched before. And so you've got this people along the border who are suffering. It affects the entire state. It affects the entire country in a very negative way. But it also, if you think about how the cartels are tied into these people, they are also in a very difficult situation as well. This is not the ideal way to do immigration, where these people have to be dependent on the cartels coming here and maybe even after they've been released into the country. And so we've given him some suggestions, and my final suggestion I thought was pretty simple. Why don't you come to the border? Why don't you come down? If you don't want to talk to law enforcement, if you don't want to talk to Border Patrol, people that work for you, if you don't want to talk to Customs and Immigration, how about at least talking to the people that are affected by this? How about, at the very least, at the very minimum, look people in the eye that have been affected by some of the crimes that have occurred as a result of this, whether it's property crimes or even worse, people have lost their lives. And so those have been our suggestions, which of course are completely ignored. But I want you to know we're here to listen tonight. I've got the best people in my office that are associated with this issue, and we really do want to hear your comments. You may have ideas we've never thought of. And we actually have a website that I want to give you. It is, if I can read it. They just dropped my glasses. I'll never see it. It's an email. bordercrisis@oag.texas.gov. I'm going to read that one more time. And let me tell you what it's for. It's for your ideas. If there are things you think we need to focus on, we have limitations on what we can do. We can only do what the Constitution and what state law allows us to do. And so we may not be able to do your idea, but I want you to know one of the things that we are looking for, we're looking for a case. We're looking for the right case. There was a case decided several years ago. It's called Arizona v. U.S., where Arizona passed several laws where they tried to basically enforce their own immigration law because the federal government wasn't doing it. And unfortunately, I believe it was a 6-3 decision or maybe a 5-3 decision. I think one judge recused herself. And the 3 liberal judges, along with Justice Kennedy and Justice Roberts, told Arizona basically they had no authority, that it was preempted by federal law. I think that's the wrong decision. When the federal government isn't enforcing the laws they pass, the citizens are unprotected, and the state ought to be able to step in and protect their citizens. So we're looking for the right, absolutely. So we're looking for the right fact pattern that we can take that case back up. And look, we still have, Justice Kennedy is gone. There are 4 liberal justices that probably side against us. Justice Roberts is still there, very likely sides against us. So we need the other 5 judges to side with us. And so we're hopeful if we have the right fact pattern that we can take it up and we can have that turned around so that Texas and Arizona and other states that want to protect their citizens can do it. And so with that, I think what I'd like to do is, unless you guys have any comments, either any of you want to say anything before we have questions, I'd like to open it up for questions. And believe me, I'll probably be referring most of them to my team because they know a lot more about the law as it relates to immigration and criminal justice than I do. So with that, I don't know how we're doing questions, but Sheriff, you got those?
Law enforcement requires law enforcement officers, prosecutors, and county judges, county commissioners to work together. If a county prosecuting attorney does not have enough resources to prosecute all the state law violations in a county, can the AG's office help?
100% yes. The entire team of prosecutors that I have is designed for this exact scenario. Here's the one caveat, and the one thing that you have to remember: we have to be invited in. Okay, I've got a team of prosecutors who are ready and willing, and they're the best prosecutors in the state of Texas, bar none. And they are willing to come down. We travel. We got cases pending in just about every county across the state of Texas, except for Harris County. I think Harris County had, because they're not willing to invite us in. But that's really the key. Okay, and we refer to it as kind of the vampire rule. We have to be invited into your house before we can come in. And a lot of folks, a lot of prosecutors, a lot of elected officials, guess what? They're not willing to say, I need help. They don't want to do it because they think to do so is saying that they don't have the resources to do their job. That's not what we're here about. We play a different role every time we go to a county of supporting the local law enforcement. If we need to take the lead, we'll be happy to do that. But we'll play whatever role is needed in order to make sure that we can prosecute not just these types of cases, but any case. If your prosecutor can't do it, have patience with them. Understand that they're living within a budget just like everybody else is, and we're here to help.
If you are a county or a city official, grab your pen or your phone, and I'm going to give you 2 statutes. I'm not giving you any special insight or an opinion from the Attorney General's office, but I want you to write down 2 statutes that are directly relevant to calling upon us for help, okay? And they're both in the Texas Government Code. So it's Texas Government Code. The first one is 402.028. 402.028. It's called Assistance to Prosecuting Attorneys. And then the second one is Texas Government Code Section 402.029. 402.043, 402.043, and that's called Questions Relating to Actions in Which the State is Interested, which gives us the ability to advise county attorney, prosecuting attorneys. So, spot on, write those down. You can call upon those, you can seize upon those statutes to get our help. All right, next question. Can the people of Texas finish the border wall?
At this time, I'd like to ask you to take out your wallets, and we're going to pass a plate. The answer is, I don't know why not. It's just a matter of cost. We have over 1,200 miles of border. The federal government was paying for it. They're actually still paying for it. They're just not building it. So the number I heard was we were spending $6 million a day to not build the wall, which is amazing given that part of it was it was meant to prevent flooding, and they were tearing some of that down to build it up better. Now a lot of these places are not protected from flooding, so it makes no sense to not continue. And I don't know if for those of you who have not seen this wall, it's pretty remarkable what they were doing and how the construction was being done. I think it's definitely part of the solution, and there's no doubt we could do it if we could figure out how to fund it. So we will pass those offering plates at the end of the service, so please get ready.
And one other thing. All right, you guys have probably seen that there's a whole bunch of like billions and trillions of dollars of cash that is going from the federal government back to the states. And a lot of this cash is having all kinds of strings attached to it. So a question that often comes up, so this question wasn't asked, but I'll just sort of add it as a sub-question to this, which is, well, can you use some of that federal money to build the wall? If we don't dip into the Texas pot of money, can you use the federal pot of money? I mean, it was y'all's money in the first place, so why can't we use it to build the wall? And it's a very interesting question, and all I can say is watch for that. It may be litigated moving forward. I don't know. We'll have to see.
One more thing on that. We are putting out a video this week summarizing our last trip to the border and what we learned at the border. That was a month ago? Yeah. So one, if Alejandro, could you do me a favor? This video that's going to come out, this video is, by the way, going to profile, part of the story is about a local homeowner in McAllen that went ahead and spent $15 million of his own money to build a wall on his property because he was sick and tired of people trespassing on his land and also people dying on his land. They were coming across and they would die, and he was tired of it. And so he built this wall along the Rio Grande. And that's going to be in this video coming out. It's really important for you guys to see this video. But Alejandro, how can they see that video? What are the different ways they can see these videos? And you can come up here and use the mic real fast. And you might want to write this down. We're going to tell you where you can get access. We're putting out content every week for you guys to inform you about what's happening at the border. And this summer, starting in June, we're going to have a video series telling the story of homeowners and landowners and sheriffs and law enforcement officers and what they're experiencing at the border, because no one's telling that story, but General Paxton is going to tell that story via video. And so I want you guys to see that. So we're going to tell you how to see that and where you need to go to see that. And then one more thing, if you have a story, you've experienced something, a tragedy at the hands of the cartel or things happening, let us know. You can let Alejandro know. We want to hear that story. We want to profile your story if you have a good story to add to that. So, Alejandro, how do they watch this video?
So the way we're going to push these out is through social media. We've grown a little tired because the media has not been pushing the message, pushing the real issue, which is the border crisis. So we said, well, instead of relying on the media, why not take it into our own hands and actually be the media to some extent and go ahead and push this message out ourselves. We have the capability nowadays, phones, everyone has a video, everyone has pictures, everyone can do pretty much post anything on social media. So what we're doing is on our social media page, which is at TXAG, that's at TXAG is our social media account handle for General Paxton's office. And right there, we're going to release these videos. You'll see everything there.
Is that on Facebook and on Twitter and everything? Is it all the same?
Also on Facebook. So this, the TXAG is for your Twitter account. So you can go there and you'll see those roll out. Also on Facebook, look for Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. You'll see the seal That's where you know it's official. You'll see the little check mark. You know it's official. And all the videos, we're going to push it out. So we're telling the story. Why are we doing this? We're trying to make noise. We're trying to let people know that the situation is that bad. And the only way to explain that is to interview sheriffs, to interview property owners, to show images of the property, which many of you here have already witnessed and are experiencing and have had to pay for it out of your own pocket. Broken fences, damage to property, just scares, threats, actual shooting in your property. So those situations we want to make a noise out of. So that's what we're doing.
Here's our next question. How can you protect yourself from intruders on your land?
I'll fight you for it. Go ahead. You start.
I'll go first. Okay, so let's start with your home, okay? You have a right to protect your house. So if someone does try to come into your home illegally, you have a right to protect your home. You're a Texan. That's your right. We all understand that, right? You can clap for that. We believe in self-defense, okay? Now, what I don't recommend you do, though, is to get around the rules, you shoot through the door to hit a guy coming up the steps. Like, that's not self-defense. They have to actually be trying to come into your home, okay? That's one key equation for the home defense aspect. Now, this question, though, implicates a little broader than that. That's like, what can you do to protect your land? And so it's really important, I believe, and this is my short answer to that question, is that you call law enforcement if people come on your land illegally. Because it's very important that these people get arrested. We need to document. We need to be documenting that these people are trespassing on land. And the only way you can document that is by getting them arrested and in a jail where law enforcement can book them in. And we're, by the way, we're tracking. We're trying to track when the feds are not coming to pick up criminals, okay? Because they're not. They're allowing people to get arrested, and then they don't show up to pick them up when they're released from the jail. And we've been working with TDCJ and other law enforcement entities to try and track that. But it's very important that we track that. Now, to get to the broader concept of self-defense, if your life is in danger, reasonably, you have to believe that your life is in danger or that some other person's life is in danger, then you're justified in using deadly force. Now, Josh in a minute is going to explain a little more detail about that, and he touched on it a minute ago, but that's the general concept. You need to be able to articulate how your life is in danger or how your child's life is in danger or your spouse's or some other innocent third party. That's the general concept of self-defense. Josh?
So we talked about this a little bit earlier about how when you're in these situations, you're going to be judged later on. That is absolutely 100% true. So what lens is the person who's going to judge you going to be looking through? First thing they're going to ask is, were you reasonable? Okay, was it a reasonable belief? The second part of that, was it a reasonable belief that it was immediately necessary? This question is particular to property, so I'm going to discuss specifically to that because it is a very limited circumstance where Texans can use deadly force to defend their property. When we're talking about your home and your life and your person, we value that at a higher level, and so the standard is a little bit different. But for property, it's just stuff, right? It's just things. We take pride in our property and pride in our homes. For those out there that own a little bit more acres than I do, and you own a little bit of a ranch or a ranchette, you take pride in that as well. But the law just views it as a little bit lower standard in the sense that in order for you to use deadly force, it's got to be reasonable, it's got to be immediately necessary, and it's got to be in relation to one of these crimes. Arson, so if someone's trying to set a fire on your property. Burglary, if they're breaking into your home or breaking into your car. Robbery, they're taking something by force. Aggravated robbery, they're using a deadly weapon to take something by force. Or a nighttime theft, or a criminal mischief. Now, criminal mischief is a destruction of any property from various different levels of how much value that your property is. It's a very, very specific set of circumstances. I'm a lawyer. I've been a prosecutor my entire career. When I explain self-defense to juries, it is by far one of the most confusing things out there as part of our law. And I'm only telling you that as a warning to you of, I believe in self-defense, 100%. And at the time and the moment that you're trying to make these decisions, you're not going to have the time to think about, what did that guy from the AG's office say? Hang on, sir, can you hang on there for a second? Are you committing an arson, a burglary, a robbery, or aggravated? No, you're not going to have time to do that. It literally, my belief is that the law contemplates for Texans to be able to make that split decision to use deadly force, and in the cases that it's justified, you will be able to use self-defense.
Great, thanks, guys. All right, next question. The Texas Code allows a declaration of a state of law enforcement emergency to prevent invasion. Why not treat this, I imagine the border crisis, why not treat this as a law enforcement emergency against cartels instead of an immigration issue? So a couple of thoughts on that may not get directly to the question, but I just want you all to be made aware of some of the tools that political subdivisions, i.e. counties and cities, have at your disposal. So first, local officials, county and city, local officials may, under certain circumstances, declare a state of local disaster. So your county judge, your county commissioner's court, mayor, and so forth can, under certain circumstances, declare a state of local disaster. Some counties have already done this. Some have not. Some have asked us, can we do this? And our response at this point is simply to direct them to the Texas Government Code, as this person asking a question rightly points out. That's all under Texas Government Code, Chapter 418. So if you're a local official, write that down. Chapter 418, it lays out the conditions under which you can declare a local disaster, and it lays out what gets activated, what happens when you do that. So that's the first tool, local disaster. The second thing local officials can do is they can request the governor to declare a state of emergency for their, all right, we got a couple. All right, we got some more over here too. How about in the middle? I don't know. All right, so, and this is under Chapter 433 of the Texas Government Code. Okay, I'm not going to go into it now, but if you're a county or city official, you can pull open Texas Government Code Chapter 433, and it lays out what you need to do in order to write the governor, what you need to say, what happens if he grants it, and so forth. So you guys have to make a decision at the local level. And then the other things that you can do, I've already mentioned those two government codes about assisting with prosecuting attorneys, county attorneys, and so forth. There's two other provisions that I'll mention. So local leaders can also work with their state representatives to ask the Attorney General for an opinion. So it's not just like a, hey, Attorney General Ken Paxton, what's your opinion on this? And you just get a letter in the mail. An Attorney General opinion is a formal document that goes through a formal process, and it has sort of like quasi-judicial, it's not quite like a court writing an order that's binding like black and white law, but it's almost there. And if you work with your state rep, your state senator, or other officials, they can send a formal letter to us, say, hey, can you opine on XYZ question of the law? And then we get our lawyers on it, and it takes a few months to go through, and then we publish this thing. And courts take it very seriously, local officials take it very seriously. So,
can I ask a question? Do we let
yes, sir?
Do we let congressmen do that? U.S. congressmen, I'm just asking.
Believe it or not, United States congressmen are not authorized to ask our opinion. So yeah.
I was just trying to help.
So you'll have to get with your state rep. He can ask us the opinion, but we don't listen to the congressman. I'm just kidding. Some guy likes we don't listen to Congress. That's exactly right. So you have some tools at your disposal. The question of like why not treat this as this type of emergency, that type of emergency. Look, that's a question of discretion and judgment for your local county and city leadership. So I would communicate with him or her on those things. Anybody have any extra comments? Yeah, sure.
In addition to that, I wanted to point out for law enforcement folks, and I don't know, do we have any district or county attorneys with criminal prosecution? Okay. So under 1250 of the Penal Code, during a declaration of disaster, including a local disaster, you can bump up the enhancements on punishment for certain crimes. So certainly something to think about. If your local government has declared one of these, it's certainly something to look at.
Okay. Kinney County Sheriff Co. is charging all apprehended illegal aliens with evading arrest and child endangerment. Do you support this?
So we get questions all the time at the AG's office from, not all the time, but we have gotten them from DAs or county attorneys asking us, these are the fact patterns of this case. Is this a crime that we can prosecute? And consistently, we don't weigh in on fact patterns. So to answer this question, the real question is, what happened in that case? And he may very well have good cases there. There's no way for us to know because we don't know those facts. So if someone did in fact evade arrest, then yes, you can charge them with evading arrest. If someone, and I think it was endangering children, what was the charge? What was the charge? Endangering children? Yeah, child endangerment and evading arrest. Yes, if the facts are there and they can prove that. So what will happen if they make that arrest? Then in the criminal justice system, that person then goes to the county jail, gets booked in, and the case gets referred to the county attorney or the district attorney, depending on who has jurisdiction over that case. And then that judge and that county attorney, district attorney will then decide whether they're going to prosecute that case. And during that process, that person will be offered probably a plea bargain. And if they take the plea bargain or don't take the plea bargain, eventually they could end up in a trial. So it just depends on those situations, and those are very fact-intensive questions. So we really can't say what the result of those cases would be.
Can you touch more on your lawsuits against the Biden administration regarding the border crisis and what could come of those? Sure. Okay. Go ahead.
Aaron's the one that does the research, and then I go out on TV and talk about it. But I make him do all the work.
It's a good pairing, though. We work together well. All right, so Attorney General Paxton mentioned that we have sued the Biden administration. We've sued him a lot of times, but we've sued him 5 times on just the immigration question. And there may be more, but I won't say anything about that tonight. But, so we got 5 of them. Let me quickly review, okay? And this is in chronological order. First was the deportation freeze. We sued the Biden administration 2 days after he was inaugurated. 2 days. No red or blue state has sued a different colored administration faster than anyone in the last 50 years than Attorney General Ken Paxton. So let's give him a round of applause for that. Within a week of filing that lawsuit, the judge said, Texas, your argument is so right that we're going to give you guys what they call a temporary restraining order. So right off the bat, they were like, these guys are going to win. You guys must observe the deportation laws immediately. And then eventually, we argued on the merits over the next couple of months, and just last week, the court dismissed it, which means that we had a full and complete victory on this case, extremely fast. There'll be no appeals. We won. Texas won. Attorney General Paxton won on the deportation issue. So that was the first lawsuit. Already a win, full win. The second lawsuit that we brought against the Biden administration on the border crisis has to do with the public charge rule. Okay, so the public charge rule is a long-standing rule in federal statute and in federal case law that says something to the effect of, if you are an immigrant attempting to come into the country, legally or illegally, and you are likely to be a net cost on the system that you're trying to come into, we, as the sovereign nation, have the right to exclude you. It's called they're a public charge. It's a public charge rule, okay? The Biden administration said, we're not really going to follow that. We're not really going to observe that so well, because that's kind of mean. I mean, are people really costs? Come on, let's just let them in. Okay, so we sued them, and given the posture of the case, we went straight to the United States Supreme Court. Now, the United States Supreme Court had 2 choices. They could have just poured us out completely and said, your case has no merit, and go away, good try. But what they did instead is they sent it all the way back to the district court to be relitigated for reasons I'm not going to get into here tonight. But it's a great sign. They said, hold on a second, it's not ready for us, but we want the situation to develop. Let's send it back to the district court. And so we're going to litigate it from the district court to the appeals court and then up to the United States Supreme Court again.
Let me just jump in real
Yes.
fast. So this cost to the state, this public charge issue is so big because it's going to cost you guys in the long run, all of you. It's going to cost all of Texas. It's going to cost all of the United States. Let me give you an example of this cost. So we learned, we got to get into the Donna facility with General Paxton, and we got to see where they're housing these children. It costs, these children, by the way, they have video games, they have television, they have internet. They're talking to their cartel buddies. They're online, on the phone all day. And every day they're there, each one of those child, it costs the United States $750 a day to house them. Let me say that again. $750 a day. Think about what your mortgage or your rent is. And we're paying that to house them there. And here's an example. Sheriff Louderback, how much does it cost to house an inmate in your jail right now? Minimum $50 to house an inmate, but the federal government is giving them internet access so they can talk to their cartel buddies. Let's not forget about that. It's $750 a day. And so I want you to let that sink in. If you leave here today, just know your federal government is wasting your dollars. Wasting.
By the way, just so you know, I mean, this is not the Ritz-Carlton. These are tents with plastic things keeping them in. They're in bunk beds. The cost of that one facility with 1,500 kids is $400 million a year. That's just one facility. It's unfathomable to me that Sheriff Louderback's spending $50 a day, and they're spending almost $750 a day for one child every single day they're there. I don't understand how that's even possible. It's not. Literally, they could take them to the Ritz-Carlton. It would be cheaper. So I don't know why they don't just do that, because this makes no sense to me.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to make sure you guys. It's important when we tell this story, we put actual costs to this. We tell actual stories and not just say it's going to cost the state. No, really, this is the dollar amount, and it's massive.
And I want to get this back to Aaron because he's only covered 2 of the lawsuits against Biden, back to that original question. But I do want to discuss the public charge rule is not something that the United States came up with. My sister-in-law just moved to Belgium. The first thing that she had to go through was this exact same valuation. They said, when you come into Belgium, are you going to be a public charge on this country? This is not something that the United States does. The entire world does this before you come into the country, and we're not doing anything different than they are, and we're no longer even doing it anymore. And I'll give it back to Aaron so he can finish up on the lawsuits.
Great, thanks. And I'll go through these final 3 fairly quickly because the situations in those cases are less complex. They're still developing, and then I'm going to turn it over to Attorney General Paxton for final word. So, deportation freeze, first lawsuit. Second, public charge rule, second lawsuit. Third was the failure for federal law enforcement to take custody of dangerous criminals. So we sued the Biden administration because Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, ICE, came out with a memo from the head of ICE and circulated a memo to all hands laying out all of these sort of discretionary arrests that were inconsistent with federal law. So federal law says you got to arrest guys if XYZ happens. ICE director says, I'm going to promulgate this memo that says, well, there's all these other complicating factors, and maybe it's not so black and white, and after all, if it is black and white, it's such a drain on our resources, and also it's just it's so mean, right? I mean, this is not our country. This is not my country. So we said, no, you can't do that. You don't have discretion. The Constitution requires the executive branch to take care that the laws are faithfully executed. It doesn't give him that sort of discretion to change unilaterally federal law. So we sued him, and that process, we filed a preliminary injunction. We're going to have a hearing on that in June, so we might get good news this summer, okay? Fourth lawsuit, Migration Protection Protocols, also known as the Remain in Mexico program. For a long time, federal law, bottom line is if you come here and you have certain issues, you have to stay in Mexico to await processing. You can't come up here and then just pretend like, oh yeah, sir, just come on back in next year and we'll process you there. No, you have to remain in Mexico. That was federal law. The Biden administration said, we're not going to enforce that any longer. Once again, for the same reasons as that third lawsuit, you can't just unilaterally decide to enforce or not enforce willy-nilly the laws that you like and you don't like. That's not the role of the executive branch. So we sued, and we have another preliminary injunction that's been filed, and we'll get some movement on that in June. The latest lawsuit that we filed is regarding the COVID protocols, okay? So say whatever you want about, and I think we're all on the same page about masks and the real national security threat that COVID provides, okay? No comment on that, but I think we're all friends on that issue. Nevertheless, federal law requires you to get a test. If you're an immigrant, legal or illegal, you got to get the test, and if you have test positive, you got to be quarantined. So guess what the Biden administration does? They don't test them, and if you have it, there's no real protocols in place to safely quarantine them or assure that they're not interacting with hundreds of other illegals who are coming over the border at the same time. Once again, this is not just bad for our country, but it's illegal to ignore those protocols. So we sued them for that. There are maybe more lawsuits that are cooking, but those are 5. And let me tell you something. 5 in just a few months of the Biden administration getting inaugurated. I know that first lawsuit was a record, but I'm telling you right now, 5 lawsuits, massive lawsuits, that fast, it is only because you have an attorney general who is laser focused, unlike too many Republicans, not Congressman Cloud, he's a good one, but too many Republicans who are sitting on their heels and waiting for just the situation to pass, and hopefully they'll get somebody else in office in 2024. But this attorney general knows that there is no time to waste and is devoting all 4,300 of his employees to keeping Texas free, to keeping Texas prosperous, to keeping Texas safe and secure for your families. And it's only because of this man. And on that note, I'll turn it over to him.
I'll just say this, Texas is different. I mean, we've got 7 lawsuits against the Biden administration. There's a few, almost most of the states haven't sued Biden at all. A few may have 1 lawsuit. There's only 1 that has 7. And there's a reason. It's because of you. You all have given us the support. You're the kind of people that care about this. And I'm telling you, this country doesn't survive without people like you giving us the opportunity to go fight this fight. And you look at the founding of this country, and the founders were in this very unusual situation of having to take on the largest empire in the history of the world. And yet they risked everything to do it. And they probably weren't sitting there thinking, oh, what a great opportunity to found a country. My guess is it was a little scary, and many of them lost everything they had to do it. But they cared about freedom, and they cared about giving their children and their children an opportunity to have that freedom like no other country had ever had, and they went and risked their lives for it. I think that Texas is that place. I think it's you and me that have to make that difference, because it's not going to be, this is going to be shocking to say, it's not going to be California. It's not going to be New York. I mean, it's not going to be even some of these other Republican states, not because they don't want to. They don't have the resources. We are the state that God has blessed to give those resources to go fight. And that's what we're doing. And you can tell, look at the quality of these people. These are just 3 attorneys from my office out of over almost 800. Great job. And you know what I love about these guys? And they're just a small smattering of what we've got. They are looking for opportunities to fight for freedom every single day. I mean, I don't come with all these ideas. I'm going to have a few occasional good ideas, a few. But all the good ones. They said all the good ones. No. They are literally looking at what's going on in the world, and we can't do everything. We have to pick and choose. But they're the ones that have come up with these 7 lawsuits that we have had in just a few months. So I'm really grateful for them. I'm grateful for the people, the other part of my staff that are here. But I'm tremendously grateful for the people in my office that are doing this every day and continuing the fight. And I'm so grateful to you guys and for you guys, because we can't do this without you. We need you. You guys are the ones on the front lines protecting us and having to deal with a very complicated issue that the federal government is making tremendously complicated for all of us. So just know we're here to listen. We want to learn. We want to figure out the best possible way, and we don't have all the right answers. We are struggling just like everybody else here, trying to figure out how do we deal with a federal government that isn't doing their job, that actually is not just not doing their job, but doing the opposite of what their job is. And they are leaving us on the sidelines, and they're doing great harm to our country. So God bless you all for being here tonight. We're here to make a difference, and we're not going to quit no matter what they do to us. Thank you.
Thank you, General and staff. Ladies and gentlemen, we can win this. First thing is we got to be smart. We got to be smart. We got to stay united. We got to come together as one. This area and the message from the sheriffs here that are on the stage here and the law enforcement that's here, we understand what's going on, the fear and concern that you have. That's why these gentlemen came here today to address you. If we put this thing together correctly, if we make the right choices, if you'll contact your law enforcement, if you'll watch your property, if you'll let us know when your license plates are stolen, if you'll contact us immediately if you have people on your property, if someone tries to break into your home and you are in imminent and otherwise unavoidable danger of death or serious bodily injury, that's a shoot situation. That's a shoot situation. Imminent and otherwise unavoidable danger of death or serious bodily injury. Write that down. If you want to get with me later, I'll tell it to you again. We can win this if we come together. We've got an election in just a few short months that's coming up. In the meantime, be smart in what you do and the decisions you make. Work with law enforcement, and we'll get through this together. Keep your head up. Make sure that you harden up mentally, and we'll get through this together. General, thank you again for coming here. God bless Texas, these United States. Thank you all very much.